Hello.
Can we have a big round of applause for our principal ma'am and Dr. Sasikumar? Thank you everyone. You may now settle down. प्रथमे नर्जिता विद्या, द्वितीये नर्जितं धन्म, तृतीये नर्जितं पुण्यं, चतुर्थी किम करिष्यसि? What translation? What can you do in the fourth part of your life when you have not gained knowledge in the first, money in the second, and merit in the third? A very hearty good morning to every one of you present over here. We thank you for joining us today on our event.
Hello.
We begin every event by invoking the blessings of the Almighty. I now invite our principal ma'am and guest of honor to light the lamp and seek blessings from Goddess Saraswati. Can we have a big round of applause for our principal ma'am and Dr. Sasikumar?
राजश्री सोल से सारे अपडेट्स
Thank you everyone. You may now settle down.
या कुन्देन्दु तुषारहार धवला
तृतीये नर्जितं
या शुभ्रवस्त्रावृता या वीणावरदण्डमण्डितकरा
a very hearty
या श्वेतपद्मासना या ब्रह्माच्युतशङ्करप्रभृतिभिः देवैः सदा वन्दिता सा मां पातु सरस्वती भगवती निःशेषजाड्यापहा.
Hello.
We begin every event by invoking the blessings of the Almighty. I now invite our principal ma'am and guest of
शुक्लां ब्रह्मविचारसारपरमाम् आद्यां जगद्व्यापिनीं वीणापुस्तकधारिणीम् अभयदाम्
Can we have a big round of applause for our principal ma'am and Dr. Sasikumar?
Rajshri Soul se सारे updates
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
sir.
You may now
Thank you,
settle
ma'am.
down. Our college,
या
Institute of
कुन्देन्दु
Technology, is honored
तुषारहारधवला
with
या
the
शुभ्रवस्त्रावृता या वीणावरदण्डमण्डितकरा या श्वेतपद्मासना या ब्रह्माच्युतशङ्करप्रभृतिभिः देवैः सदा वन्दिता सा मां पातु सरस्वती भगवती.
and discuss the overall inclusive and equitable growth and development in the various sectors in the compasses of our academic. This is the period of the history of India when the country is going to take a quantum leap. For India, this is the time, right time. Yahi samay hai, sahi samay hai. Idea starts with an I, just like India starts with an I. Development efforts begin from self. Youth power is both the agent of change and also the beneficiaries of change. It is in this context that AICTE, through its regional centers, is proposing to support colleges and universities in different parts of the country in organizing a lecture series on the theme Amrit Kaal Vimarsh, Vikasit Bharat at 2047. We are extremely happy and grateful to have with us today Dr. Sasikumar. I now request our principal ma'am to present a token of gratitude to our honorable guest. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Now I call upon Dr. Geeta Ajit to introduce us to our today's speaker of development dialogue.
Thank you, Archie. Today we are really honored to have an eminent speaker with us, Dr. M. Sasikumar. Dr. M. Sasikumar is currently the Executive Director of C-DAC, Mumbai. He has been with C-DAC since 1987 after completing his B.Tech from IIT Madras. Further, he did his Masters from IIC Bangalore and a doctorate from BITS Pilani. His areas of interest are artificial intelligence, robotics, and educational technology. He has co-authored 2 books. One is with Apprentice Hall on parallel computing. 9 students have completed their PhD under his guidance, and 2 are in progress. He has initiated and nurtured a number of projects in the area of AI and e-learning during his career. The OLAB project has created 200 plus virtual labs for schools and have received wide appreciation from CBSB and NCRT, particularly in the pandemic. Dr. Sasikumar has about 100 publications so far. He was an adjunct faculty in the Department of Educational Technology, IIT Bombay for about 10 years. He also served as Director R&D at C-DAC Corporate Office for 3 years. He is program committee member in a number of international conferences and a member of Board of Studies and Advisory Board for select institutions. He is fairly active in Facebook, LinkedIn, and ResearchGate, and many more. Thank you, sir, once again for accepting our invitation for development dialogue on the occasion of Amrit Kaal Vimarsh, Vikasit Bharat at the rate of 2027. And we welcome you now to give your speech. Thank you so much. Students, a big hand.
Something is coming in the way. If you can keep the line of sight clear, I think it is not able to pick the signal. Okay. Okay. A very good morning, and very happy to be here. Although in the last few years I've been less of a visitor to this campus, I have had a lot of interactions with VESIT when it was in the Sindhi colony premises as well as here for quite a few years, and other VES organizations also. Just a couple of weeks back I was there in the Arts and Commerce College also for some event. So happy to be here and to be able to talk to you on this special occasion as India's looking at India at 2047. It's a long distance away, and in particularly for those of us who are working in the information technology area, we don't know what is coming up 5 years from now. So talking about 20-25 years ahead is a big challenge. But we still want to have a goal. We want to have a target saying, okay, that's the kind of outcome we want to be there with. So that is where most of these initiatives are coming through. So what I have been doing over the last, during my full career actually, almost at the end of it, is mostly in the area of education. And the question that I have been asking myself is, what role can technology do effectively in furthering the goals of education? Okay, and that's what I've been working on for the last 20-25 years. So I'll give you a feel of that, and one of the major initiatives that we did was what was mentioned in the profile, OLabs, which was virtual labs for schools. Okay, and I'll tell a little more about it, and what could be done, and some opportunities for many of you also to contribute to something like that, because addressing the challenges of education is not one person's or one group's or one institution's agenda. It has to be a national agenda, and everyone has to play a big role in charting that course. Okay, and we also need loads and loads of inputs on to make these things work. And therefore, I'll give you some little story on that also, so you can see to what ways can you contribute to this kind of activity. So, so broadly, the agenda is I've kind of divided into two parts. Not very sure how the time will go, but we'll see how that works out. So first is to tell you what is the special about that title. The OLabs journey, path ahead, virtual labs at a national level, and then subject to time we'll switch to the second topic, which is assessment. That's also something that is very close to my heart. We have done some work with CBSE on implementing the SAFL initiative at a nationwide level, and we have some other initiatives to support assessments like OBRIC. So and then maybe some little bit of thoughts ahead, and then I'll open it for questions. Okay. So subject to time, maybe I will cut it off in the middle, and other parts we can look at it later on. So, there are three basic keywords in the title, which is effective technology interventions for education. So, why education? Because I think we all know that education is one place where, I mean, you're all there in the middle of it, and we are sometimes watching it from outside, sometimes receiving the benefits or the negativities of that education. So, we are all concerned about education in one way or the other. And if you look at the space of education, also in the last decade or two, there is a lot that is happening in that space. Okay, so I think everybody is aware of the NEP, the new National Education Policy, which has been released just 2-3 years back. And so there, if you look at that, I don't know how many of you have actually read the core of the NEP. It's worth looking at it because there are lots of interesting thoughts in it. Okay. Now, I think the challenge in front of all of us is to realize those thoughts in an effective way. It requires a lot of coordination, work, and contributions, and all that to come from. Okay, and that is where our role is to put all that thing in place so that the effect is now seen by maybe in another 10 years, 20 years time. The new education policy is aiming to bring in a lot of changes. And a lot of these changes are positive changes because, for example, many students have problems when they move from one college to another college, one university to another university, one state to another state, and one discipline to another discipline. And in a era like what we are living in today, those transitions are inevitable because for whatever reasons you want to change place. So that's one reason why you want to change a state or university and all that. But also because today, for example, you can't find that work which is only civil engineering or only mechanical engineering or only computer engineering. Every piece today requires a combination of all of this. So if I say that, I know only civil engineering, don't talk to me anything else, and I shut off my interfaces, there is very little that I will be able to contribute. So at least I should be open about understanding what others are doing. And to take a simple example, if you want to, if you look at any discipline today, you can't do it without computer science, computer technology, computer science in some level. Okay, you may not necessarily learn all the theories of computation and all that, but you still have to do programming and application development and all that kind of things. You can't think of civil engineering today without it. You can't do mechanical engineering today. And then there are also offshoot areas like AI, data science, business analytics, and all that also, which are pillars built on top of computer science as a base. So interdisciplinary nature of work is for whatever reason, how do I transfer these information to them? And most of the time it is impossible because there will be some handwritten record which won't make too much sense there. So you are, important that it is be computer science or be IT or be electronics or be something else. What is important is what is the competence that you are bringing and what is your list of capabilities. So if that is how these things are defined, it is much easier now for me to assess for something else or for you to continue your studies somewhere and so on. So that's a kind of picture that NEP paints, and therefore something that is worth looking at to see how do you facilitate these kind of things from happening. So removal of rigid boundaries, support to our local languages, more portability for whatever that you acquire in any educational setup are some of the positive agenda in NEP that I have found when you're looking at it. And it is also interesting that NEP recognizes technology as a very core component of making this happen. Without technology, most of this will remain a dream. Okay, but effectively bringing in that technology, empowering it, and enabling it from ground up is the challenge for making these things to happen. Okay, and that's what you are going to be doing in the years to come or days to come. Okay, so on the other side, we have always, we also see that even before computers or all these technology coming in, teachers have been very creative and innovative in trying to bring whatever technology is at their disposal to improve the quality of education. You create contraptions in the class. During the pandemic, there was a nice video circulating of somebody wrapping up a mobile phone and hanging it on this thing to get their lectures recorded. So this is something that that is inherent to the educational setup. And so they have been open to experiment with anything they can lay their hands on for improving learning experience. And technology is no different there. So every technology, whatever you can name it, there is a place where that can play some positive role in improving education. Okay, and that is why the technology space becomes very important there. And in the current era, computers, mobile phones, digital cameras, printers, including 3D printing technologies, AR, VR, artificial intelligence, these are all highly talked about as technologies that can impact education quite significantly. Okay, and that's what we want to look at. Solutions using these and more are already available in myriad forms. So whether you are doing online lecturing, so these talks are getting relayed to hundreds of other people at the same time. These are all miracles of, that technology has made possible, which was not there possibly even 5 years, 8 years back. We wouldn't have been able to think of things like that. Okay, but the challenge is the first word, the effective, because not every technology suits every aspect of education equally, right? So what is the best level of matching that is possible is to be done by applying this effectiveness filter, right? So effectiveness of any technology intervention depends on many factors, right? So the first thing is the profile of the population. So if I have to look at technology for teaching small kids at kindergarten or primary classes to your age, to adult learning classes, my approach to technology is going to be very different. Okay, so you will see that those games for small kids, you achieve something and immediately a lot of clap, ha 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 and all that. But when a game aimed at you, if it does, you will actually cry when you do that kind of clap, because you know that these are overdoing it. Right? And for an adult education, that's not the kind of feedback that they will look for. They want something that is more sober, more meaningful there. So how the technology plays out, what medias are accessible, what kind of things can you do are dependent on the profile of the population, whether it is rural, urban, or your prior exposure to technology that you are using, and the age group. Right? So what I'm giving you the example of. The motivation level. If you have come to learn and I use some kind of technology, it has one impact. If you have come because your parents have said you have to go to college, then the impact of technology is very different. And I'm sure a lot of you know that sometimes that is why you are here. So the motivation level. Somebody who is serious to learn, I want to understand what is going on. I want to learn this. For that person, certain kind of things are very meaningful. For example, simulation-based systems and inquiry-based learning, going and lot of doing explorations, library, they make a lot of sense when you have an inner urge to learn. But if you are more preparing for the exam, you possibly are not very interested in getting into that much of detail. You have another kind of expectation or requirement. The nature of the subject and topic. The technology that is fantastic for mathematics is going to be terribly boring or irrelevant when you want to teach history, right? So the choice of topic and the subject that you are teaching is also important. So, and then you can further subdivide and say what is the level of things. If you are learning, for example, countries and their capitals, versus if you are learning, the evolution of whatever, different nations over a period, the way you want to convey it, the way you want to organize it, the way what technology can do there will actually be different. Right? So the topic and the subject that you are currently dealing with also decides this. So it is not that I have PowerPoint slides and my job is done. Everything in the universe is can be done using a PPT slides. That's not true, and that is why lot of technology interventions actually becomes a disaster, because of this thoughtless use of technology. Putting something in slide is not exactly considered technology today as well. So whether the subject is formal, semi-formal, informal, descriptive, prescriptive, all of these are things that we should look at before you decide what is the right technology to talk to, right? So, and the purpose of the discourse, is it, are you doing it for learning something? Are you doing it for preparing for an examination? Is it for a competitive examination training? These are also relevant questions to ask when you say, how should I teach? And every teacher at some level is going to ask this question before they start the semester of teaching a subject and say, whom am I talking to? Or what is the subject that I am going to do? What is the nature of that subject? Is it more formal subject? Is it a more descriptive? So accordingly, you create what are called the pedagogy plans, the instructional plans, and say, no, I should introduce a lot of interactive activities so that the boredom is less. I should have more practice sessions where the concept is learned properly. So these are all, this is how the teacher's plan for the semester actually goes through. And that reflects how you want to adapt technology to these requirements also. Okay. So these are some of the aspects that you look at, and that is why bringing any technology, whether you use AI or augmented reality or whatever, it doesn't matter. Whatever it is, you want to put it through this filter. Is this the right thing for this audience, this subject, this topic, this age group, right? And that is why the focus has to be on effective, which is unfortunately not so much happening. Everybody is looking at technology, everybody is looking at education, but the effective is something that not adequate attention that gets done there. So proper matchmaking is important for good results. Okay, and that's a thing that all of us have to keep in mind when you look at technology. Okay, so if you look at technology also, my water bottle was there somewhere in that white bottle. I'm just warm water. So, okay. So if you look at technology, I mean, I'm sure everybody is very familiar with lecture slides, for example, right? Almost every teacher uses it today. And you go to net, you can download slides on any topic, whether you know the topic or not, you can get all the slides there. So slides are overused resources, right? But then there are also things like animations, online quizzes, learning management systems, chat tools, discussion forums, blogs. Now, blog is not blog, it is vlog. And so all of these are things I'm sure this generation doesn't have to be talked about, right? So you are familiar with all these, and these are very well already in use. But what we also want to look at is, this has a time factor, okay. Yeah, so one of the things that we have been trying in the last few years, we started that many okay, doesn't matter. So we, because as I said, I started looking at technology for education about 2-3 decades back, and rather than just look at technology, we want to look at what is the space which is very important for technology to look at. So one of the challenges that we found everywhere, because I even visited some of the tribal schools and all that. So there one place had something called a science laboratory. Okay, there was a room with a label. So I opened it, completely empty, not even a chair in it. Okay, and so this is not unusual. I'm sure that many schools don't even have a room, forget even anything inside there. And if you have a room, there may be some equipments, who uses it, what for purpose, we don't know. And even if it is used, how often is it made use of? How much access does the student actually get there? And I remember in my school days, this lab is like a mechanical process, right? So if it is a physics lab, everybody gets ready, and say when you say start, you just march down to the lab, everybody takes positions, and within that half an hour, you are supposed to achieve some miracles. And you have no idea what is going to be there, you don't know what the equipments are, you don't know how they work, you don't know what to do with them. So you look at each other and do something, and ultimately copy from the neighbor's book, get your record right, lab is over, Okay, I have very hardly any memories of any lab experiment that I have done in my school or college days, because these are more of that kind of process. And after that half an hour or 45 minutes, you will never see or hear about that particular experiment in the rest of the entire education system. So you have no time to reflect. What did I do? Was this the right thing to do? Could I have done it better? Was there something else? Is this really true? Nothing happens. You don't even actually end up into a discussion. So what is the purpose of these labs? The labs are supposed to be the place where you can actually experiment with the ideas or the theorems or the theories that you have learned, apply it and see it actually working in practice, right? And do measurements and all that to see that yes, Newton's law is correct, or the perpendicular bisectors of a triangle always intersect in the middle. So all of that things you want to experiment so that you are able to internalize it. But where does that happen if you do like this? So we realize that is a very interesting area to look at and say, how do we make this make the labs more affordable, more accessible? So, and we are technology people. We said, okay, let's try building virtual labs. Okay, so there are a few people who have been trying to do that abroad and all that. So we looked at some of those models and collaborated with Amrit University, and we created some initial small set of labs, and we showed it to CBSE. They liked it and say, this is very useful. So that time's chairman wrote to all the schools saying, there are these 20 labs are available. Do consider look at them. So then we went to the main phase of the virtual labs project. And we ended up with about 200, 180 virtual labs covering physics, chemistry, biology, mathematics, and some English labs for classes 9, 10, 11, 12, okay, as per the CBSE curriculum. So we implemented this. But again, what you find is that you go to school and or you go to any of these school regional centers or whatever. Everybody says, oh, this is very nice. Okay, now what? Nothing. Right, so no one is interested in adopting it in the schools. No, you literally go and beg them saying, why don't you try it out? But nothing happens. Okay, so it was so difficult to persuade the schools or teachers to even just listen to us and to do a workshop where we can do this. And then COVID stuck. Okay, and almost all teachers became TV stars overnight, because who have never sat in front of a camera is going live lectures to their students, okay, without knowing or recorded or otherwise. So, but that transformation, I think they did very well. Most teachers were able to do the Amitabh Bachchans and Hema Malini's overnight. But what do you do about the labs? There is nothing you can do because schools are closed. You need those equipments, and what can you do? Just saying that in Hooke's law you suspend a spring, you do all that is hand waving. There is no labs there. That is where we found that this actually made a lot of difference. Even CBSE, NCERT, who was so reluctant to support it in the beginning, came all the way, all out, and the Ministry of Education told me personally saying, C-DAC and Amrita has made a difference to this country. Okay, it was that significant because at least classes 9, 10, 11, 12, you could at least do something in physics and chemistry. You can go online, you can actually perform the experiment, show that you have actually done this, and so you can at least complete that activity. Okay, we didn't have all the labs yet, but I mean, 80% labs is still much better than not doing any lab at all. So virtual labs became a game changer during that period. Okay, and that is why our commitment also became serious. The government came out and said, no, this is a very important initiative. They supported one more phase and say we should have something like almost 1,000 virtual labs for schools. Okay, so that's the kind of initiative from a government side to make all these things happen. Okay, now that was one part of it, but then we come back and say, no, it is not just because pandemic that you can't go to college or school that you need this technology. Okay, so I'll come to some of those parts of it in the time to go. So as of now, I think we have more than 500 to 600 virtual labs are available. You can go to www.alabs.edu.in and access all the labs free. There is no money, nothing is required. It's a free resource available. You can tell your younger brothers, sisters, etc. that these resources are available. And today it covers not just the science and maths, but we have languages in English, Hindi, Sanskrit, computer related subjects, social science, and science for the lower classes where it's not yet split into physics, chemistry, biology, and even more subjects. We are also bringing in some AR, VR technology based labs, some 3D related labs and all that. So it's a good collection that we are actually bringing into this. Okay, so these are available. This is still an ongoing project, and more work is to happen. So if you go to the portal, this is what will actually look like, and there are tabs for each of those subjects. You click on it. There is class-wise division there: class 7, class 8, class 9, etc. So now the focus is from class 6 to 12. Okay, almost all subjects are covered. Okay, and some gaps are there that is also getting addressed. So this is a resource that is there. And it is also accessible through the Diksha portal, which all the school content is available on Diksha, your textbooks and videos and stuff like that. This is also getting linked with that. Okay, so this has now become a national resource, and we had Honorable Home Minister Amit Shah ji launched one major step of this virtual labs just last year, announcing the creation of these additional labs and all that. Okay, so there is a lot of interest there. Now, taking a step back to what I was saying earlier, labs are important devices in the learning process. Reason that hands-on feel, because I think we have, if you are into social media or any of those education related books or material that you read, you find lots of stories of students who have got 95 or 99 marks out of 100 in physics and chemistry, but when your tire gets stuck on the road, you will call the mechanic. Okay, so the basic principles of whatever Newton's first law, second law, third law, none of that makes any sense. You don't know how to apply or its relevance in the practical context. So this is one reason why you want to look at some of those things, right? Connecting the theory to the real life. So when you bang your head on the door outside, you should say, "Oh my God, Newton's third law," right? So you understand that there is a practical application of whatever you have studied there. Focus on experiment as a key paradigm in science. This is also something that many of us working with semi-research or researchist organizations are very concerned about. When you do a lab is not a place only to just check whether something is working. A lab is a place where you conduct experiments. Why do you do an experiment? In order to ascertain or to refute a hypothesis. What is a hypothesis? You create a guess about something, right? Then you define an experiment to validate it or to refute it. Then you perform that experiment and say, yes, my hypothesis was right. We do this informally in many places. When you go out and you don't find the rickshaws there, you start forming hypotheses. I think there must be a rickshaw strike today, or there must be a bandh or something today, right? So we do that at various levels, but we want to look at make this as something that as a philosophy of formulating a hypothesis, establishing an experiment, conducting the experiment, and using that results of that experiment to validate or refute the hypothesis. If this is not there, then what are we doing as science? Okay, so therefore we are also concerned that the labs need to be seen more seriously than just a part of the curriculum. Okay, so by the way, there are supposed to be something like 4 paradigms of science. Does anyone remember what are those 4 paradigms? So experiment is one paradigm that we talk about. What are the other paradigms of science? No? You can find out. Um, There are some which are current ones which are recently added. So one of the recently added one is simulation. So lot everything is possible to do by conducting experiments. Nor the oldest paradigm is theory. You actually write down the equations and solve the things and say yes, E equal to mc square, like what Einstein would have done. Okay, he didn't have an opportunity to do experiment, but he did everything on whatever the patent office papers. But so theory, experiment, and today if I want to check whether something is true, the ecosystem is so complex that neither of this is feasible. So you simulate. You simulate a very complex structure with the kind of technologies, computer technologies and resources available. You can simulate very complex structures, which is why the whole AI field is there today because of that heavy simulation. So you can simulate behavior, complex structures and use that to establish whether something is true or not. Okay, and there are one or two more you can explore. And also this is something that we all in the education side and educational technology side we very favorite quotes. Tell me, I will forget. Show me, I may remember. Involve me, I will understand. So if the students actually involve in the activity, which is why we talk about active learning. So teachers ask you questions in between so that you don't get uninterrupted sleep in the class. At least you sleep, you get at least a break, right? And also to make sure that I may get a question, so I should listen to more, right? So active learning as a way to deepen the level of learning as well as to increase attention, motivation level and all that. Okay. So from those points of view also, we want to actually do something hands-on. If you are doing something with the hands, it is very difficult to sleep while you are performing an experiment. Have you tried it? You try it. Okay. try sleeping while in the lab while you are performing the experiment. Okay. So these are why we are concerned about having to ensure lab access. But this is not enough, because there are cost and space requirements, because a lab, unlike anything else, there is no technology which can reduce the lab space requirement and the infrastructure, the different equipments and all that. And you have to make this equipment available for everybody, right? So that's a huge scale-up cost. And even if I get all of that, if you want to do a chemistry lab, you need the chemical compounds every year. So you have to keep purchasing newer compounds in order to make it available to batch after batch. So cost of raw material, limited access, and that too usually in group mode, so that you amortize expenditure and space. And also one big concern that the government has been always focusing on sabka vikas sabke saath, inclusive agenda. And when we look at technology, when we do all of these, we still leave out a large population of the Divyang students. Okay. Again, Divyang is not only visually challenged. There are, somebody told me there are 21 types of accessibility challenges. Okay. From old age to memory problems to cognitive challenges to so on, so on, so on. What are we doing about them? Okay. So even that we want to look at and say, because the traditional labs are not at all accessible to these people. Because you actually are supposed to see and observe and do things with your hands. And if any of these are affected, that lab basically becomes useless to you. Right? So, and not all activities are amenable to physical labs. So, for example, I want to ask you or demonstrate to you what happens to the pendulum if I take it to Moon or Jupiter or inside the Earth, where so that I can vary G, but I get only 1 G. And whatever I do, I can't do anything about it, right? So physical lab constraint also gives me that restriction that I can only do so much. Dangerous reaction. So I want to show a nuclear reaction, or I want to show how to control fire in a building. These are all things that I cannot do in any physical lab environment. And there are tasks which happens in something like a millisecond or even lower time. The entire activity is over. How do I show you? Okay, and there are activities which takes maybe a year or two. How do I show you? So there are all these kind of things which is relevant for you to understand, but the physical lab construct doesn't allow me to do all that. Okay, so these are some of the reasons why we said no. Can technology help in many of them? And the advantage is, of course, if I make a lab available to you over online or over the web, you can first of all you can access it from anywhere. So the physical lab constraint that only during that period you can access goes away. So if you want to spend more time in the lab, yes, go ahead and spend more time. And there is no constraint. No. So for example, if I want to show you nuclear explosion, I can stretch the time. Now 1 nanosecond, I will make it into 1 second. So you can actually see 1 millisecond happening over 1,000 second period. So you can actually see a nuclear explosion. I can stretch 1 year into 5 minutes. So I can stretch time, I can expand it to compress time, and I can control what reactions should come, when it should come, I can stop. All that is possible online. So which means you can get a pretty good feel of these phenomena without having to incur all those challenges of cost and other concerns there. So that's a excitement on building virtual labs. Okay, so so they are I mean, what we have done is the simulation labs, virtual labs, and so as I said, it's unconstrained availability. Once it is developed, it is trivial cost. You can replicate it, you can host it in multiple places. All that is there. The development cost is high because there is actual programming and software development that is involved, so it will take more time. Simulations, they are they attempt to mimic the reality. So this is also something that you should understand, that is the power of the simulation-based labs. I am not constrained by the reality, right? I can adapt the reality to suit my requirement. So that's why I said you can stretch time, which is not real, but I can give you in my time dimension, I can go back and forth. You can even go back into the nuclear explosion and restart it, move back. All that is possible because I'm building a simulation. So it's not reality, it is a mimicking of the reality. So there are boundaries, that allows me to contain. So if I put a building on fire, there is very little I can do to ensure that it is controlled. But my simulated building, the simulated fire is completely under me. I can say that after a while, I will not allow it to grow. Right? So can manipulate the time scale. There are also new opportunities like a pendulum in Moon or Jupiter and all that. But it is important also that, so when we are doing virtual labs, sometimes people ask, does that mean that I don't need to invest on physical labs? Not at all. It is exact opposite. You should have your physical lab because, the example I give is, if you, the sign of that you have actually gone to a chemistry lab is at least a little bit of acid on your hand, okay, hopefully not very deep burns, and also breaking at least a few test tubes. If you have then what have you done in chemistry lab? Right? So the physical feel is important. And today's technology, there is one sense which I cannot give you, other than nonsense and all that, or even common sense. What is that sense? There is one sense that I cannot replace on the build on the computer. Smell. I mean, if you have gone near anywhere a chemistry lab, you will remember the hydrogen sulfides smell, right? But I can't do anything. My online hydrogen sulfide doesn't smell as bad as the real hydrogen sulfide, right? So the smell, even the touch, I am yet not able to do. Touch is today possible with what is called haptic devices. Okay, there are touch sensitive devices. So if I just use, take my mouse and squeeze it harder, online the pressure will become higher. If I release my hand, the pressure will become low. So these are used to build vocational skills, for example, how to saw wood or putting stuff on and cleaning and all that. So some of this we are finding ways to do it, but at least at the moment. So basically, we don't want to look at this virtual labs to mean don't have physical lab, But look at these virtual labs as amplifying the physical lab. Every 10 minutes that you spend in the physical lab, now I can give you 100 minutes equivalent of it. Right? You spend the core there and come back and experiment with all other things on the virtual mode. So you get the best of both. Okay. So that's an intended mode. So we have, building virtual labs also means that you have a comprehensive ecosystem to follow and understand the pedagogical aspects and adopt the relevant patterns. There are a rich set of affordances, I'll tell you that in a minute, and integrating into the curriculum. So all labs has actually gone through that kind of thing. So it's not just a simulation program that somebody has written and made available, but a lot of other attention has gone into it. So the theory that is relevant to the lab is actually there in the lab, associated with the lab itself, so you don't have to go elsewhere to do all that. Understanding of the process and its implications. Auxiliary requirements, for example, some lab requires you to build a plot, some requires you to make a measurement. So we actually have a online scale, you have an online protractor, so you can actually grab the protractor, look at the angle, position it there and say this angle is 35 degrees. It's exact. Okay, so you can actually do these measurements as if you are doing it on on pen and paper or on the physical lab. Okay, so these are also things that is to be built in, because otherwise the lab experience is not complete. I mean, I draw something, but I don't know whether this is actually 90 degree, and the instruction says to rotate it by 90 degree, and you click and something happens. How do I know whether you actually rotated by 90 degree or whether you did some black magic? So people should be able to verify all this. So that's how, so the core of virtual labs is the simulator, but building the simulator is not enough. It is only 20% of the work involved in building the lab. So unless you attend to all of this, the lab experience you will not get. Okay, so I'll invite you to all to go and look at that URL, play with a few labs in whatever subject that you like. Okay, so you will get a feel of what is possible, what is not possible. Okay, so this is how, for example, one of the physics lab looks like, Ohm's law. So you can see in the science lab, the equipments actually look like the real ones in the lab. You can actually go and connect the wire to the rheostat, the two ends, as if you do it in the real one. Okay, and the ohm meter will actually show the digital or analog reading as the ammeter and the voltmeter will show those readings. So as you do things, you will see that the values are changing exactly as it happens in the physical lab. So the feel of the activity or the feel of Ohm's law or Hooke's law or whatever other things are applied is something that you can get. But as I said, you will not get a shock. Even if you pass 200 volts or 1000 volt into the thing, you will not get a shock. So you are safe. Right? But if you don't get a shock, you don't get the feel of electric lab. So anyway, and what you see on the left are what is called the affordances. So every lab has a set of parameters that you decide which I allow the user to control. So in this case, you can choose the metal by which that wire is made. You can choose the length of the wire, the diameter of the wire, and the resistance of the thermostat. These are parameters that you can control. So you can play around. If I put gold this thing, or I put a silver one, or I put a copper one, will the value change? Is that, does it have more resistance, less resistance? If I make the wire longer, will the resistance increase or decrease? If I make the wire thicker, will it increase or decrease? So this is how we want you to think around that lab, not just reporting the numbers, but understand what is actually involved there. Okay, so that's the idea. So this is the typical layout that you will see for all the labs around. Sometimes only it goes. Okay, so these labs are fully ready to use. And this is like a Swiggy ordered food. You only have to open and eat. Okay, so no packaging, no preparing, and all that is required. Right. So it's a complete ecosystem. I won't get into more details. So we have ensured that there is a high degree of interactivity. So as I said, it should be very difficult for the student to sleep while they are performing the experiment. So what can we do with this kind of labs? So one is, as I said, when there is no lab available, yes, you can at least do a virtual lab and get a feel. The student would know what a Hooke's law experiment actually looks like, that there is a stand on which a spring is suspended, you put the weights, the spring elongates, I use a scale, go and measure the height, put out a graph, and I get a curve. So that at least that much you can understand. But there are more use cases. Like the usage mode 1 is before you go to the actual lab, mentally prepare yourself. What will I see in the lab? What are the different equipments? What are the affordances or what can I do with those equipments? Play around with some settings to say, so when you actually go to the physics lab, even if you get only 15 minutes, you are so mentally tuned, you know exactly what I should be looking at in the physical lab. So that 15 minutes is very effectively done. So as I said, I don't remember. I mean, we just go, somebody will make some announcement, half of it will not be heard in the din of on the lab, but you don't get much. So that can be made better use of. So the students are better prepared when they actually go to the physics lab or the physical lab, that time is much better utilized. Okay. And you can do this, use it after the lab. You can go back and say, look, you did 2 experiments in the lab, okay, 2 weights you did. Now I am going to give you 3 more weights which you should put into the same spring and tell me what happens. What are the readings that you get? Right, so when you come back, you can build on the activity that you did in the lab, okay, by continuing the simulation, trying out different scenarios, and to recall, saying, okay, so there was this scenario, what would happen if I did this? And so you get more opportunity to explore more combinations, and the reflection time. Why did something happen? You don't do this in the physical lab because there is a little time, there is too many students, etc. Now when you come back, I put the simulator on, I can ask you, what do you think is going to happen here? Why do you think that this is going to happen? Right? So you can get more insight into what is going on. So that reflection, because reflection is the fundamental to all of learning. Ask the learner to explore the virtual lab in more detail and try out more scenarios and so on. So this is post-physical lab usage. You can also use it as an instructional device. So when I am teaching Hooke's law, I can actually get the Hooke's law thing, I put a weight and see what has happened. What is this going to be proportional to? I mean, will it be linearly proportional? Will it be quadratic proportional? Will it follow some other curve? What happens if you keep on adding weights? What happens if I put very small weight? So springs are, for Hooke's law, there is a linearity region. The law is applicable only within that space. So all that I can explain in the context of something in front, that everybody can see what I am talking about. So there is an ability to connect to things, and there is an ability to relate what is happening in terms of physical. It's not exactly physical, but it is not completely vaporware either. So you can use it as an instructional device while you are teaching this, and so focal length of a lens, etc. can be explained using something like that. So OLAVs can function as a replica of the lab setup for this purpose. It is like setting up the lab here while I am teaching the subject to you, not just doing the lab activity per se. So it demonstrates the intended behavior, use affordances, etc., etc. So that's one of the use cases. And you can also use it as a active learning strategy, where you actually ask the student to play around and perform activities and then come back and use discussion here, which is also something that you would normally not be able to do because you can't do this outside the classroom. Okay, so you can stop the experiment arbitrarily and ask the learners what will happen next, right? And then you resume it, and you can then verify why did I get it wrong. What the earlier thing I said, hypothesis formation, validation, and that questioning. So these are all things that get possible because of all that. Okay, and as I said, when there is no physical lab, at least something is available, so you can make use of it. Now, one of the key things in building virtual labs is lab-specific affordances. So every lab has a predefined set of things which you are allowed. Because ideally, I should have a universe simulator. Right? You go into the lab, I can pick up any part of the universe, any equipment, put it anywhere, and things should just behave. which is impossible. There is no way you can build that level of functionality and all that to be able to do that, right? But for example, there's a lab which says to take a vessel, pour some water, boil it, and when the steam starts coming out, you will measure the temperature that to determine the boiling point of water. Now suppose I don't stop the lab and it says continue to boil. What will happen? Now if you look at all labs, nothing will happen because the lab stops at that point. We are not simulating it after that. But really speaking, if I don't do anything, the water should evaporate, it will become empty, the vessel will start getting hot, it will melt or it will catch fire depending on what material it is, and the whole lab will get into a problem. So we are not looking at infinite simulation capability, but a restricted simulation which is meant for that purpose. So when you are building a lab, this is also very important. And once you decide these affordances, like pendulum, the wire length, the value of G, material of bulb, so these are very carefully identified. Okay, and so some of this I'm going to skip. So this is basically for if you want to build a virtual lab set, but I will give you one such story. Okay, so if you want to build simulators, you can use these kind of simulators with any language, like Java or C Sharp or any programming language that you know is good enough. You can build these simulators. But if you want something that is easier to start, GeoGebra is a predefined. GeoGebra is geometry plus algebra together into one package. So you can use that. A lot of things are ready-made there. Scratch is basically a children's kind of programming language, something that is a first level programming language, very visual. So if you are not into heavy programming, that is something that you can use to build animations and visual languages. So these are things that you can try. Okay, so we did a lot of this. When we want to ask these questions, okay, now what next? All these labs are useful and people may adopt using it. We have literally lakhs of users coming on the portal and playing around, actually performing activities. And we still have continued training programs happening for schools and teachers and all that. So we are getting good response, okay. But now we are asking this question, what can we do to make it better? Okay. So one of the questions that comes up, which is something that you can also look at is, how do I do a lab examination? So I have the simulator, you can perform the activity, but can I use that simulator to do a lab examination? How do I evaluate the performance of a student? Okay. So not all of this we have final answers, but that's the way we are thinking around and say how can we implement that kind of capabilities. And we also found that particularly in the pandemic time, see, because traditionally lab is done as a group, a lot of people are doing the same lab roughly at the same time, so people are available to talk to. But in pandemic, we found that a lot of people are completely independently doing it sometime in the middle of the night, sometime early morning and all that. There is no one online to be able to discuss this. So how do I provide proper and timely guidance? Today you have chatbots are very common to most applications. You can think of avatars which can be like a pseudo teacher or a teacher image that sits inside the simulator and tell you, no, I think you have forgotten to put on that, or you are putting too much gas there or too much this, etc., etc. So you can provide guidance, which is also a place where some AI and all that can also be useful. Okay, so some ideas that you can explore. We also wanted to build in collaboration, real-time collaboration, that if somebody here is doing a lab and somebody in Nagaland is doing a lab, why not? The person is online, should be able to exchange, and if he has a question, I should be able to see it and say, no, maybe you should try this. And you can even do a combined lab, right? Because geography is no longer a constraint, right? You are all physically online. We want to look at building immersive experience. So with metaverse and all that things that is coming in, because what happens if you look at the lab, the lab is restricted to just that screen space. Okay, so you see something, you can click. The interaction with the devices is also artificial. So when I want to connect a wire, I cannot take the wire and then connect. I click one end of the wire and then drag it and release it. That is not how you connect a wire. Right? So we want to make these things more natural so that you actually feel that you are actually inside a lab. So maybe virtual reality, metaverse kind of technologies, this could be handy to make these experiences more real. You can also make it feel that I'm inside a lab. Now you don't. You know that you are outside because there is only a computer screen in front of you. Okay. So these are some of the things that we are looking at further to do. And how do we do labs for non-science subjects? Because science subjects labs are well defined in the book itself. It is documented. But if you do non-science subjects, then how do we address this? So this is also something that we want to. We have already done some work. For example, one of the challenge was building language labs. When you said we'll build labs for English, hey, what is this labs for English? So I think if you are a language teacher, you would understand how hard it is for people to learn grammatical constructs like active voice to passive voice conversion, passive voice to active voice conversion, tense conversion, proper use of pronouns, and all that grammatical phenomena. They need to be tried and again till you internalize it. Okay, it's quite like a lab activity. So if you can create these environments where students can go online and keep on doing active voice to passive voice conversion with the different sentences, and you get online feedback without having to depend on a teacher, you will learn that concept much better because you have enough experiments to do. So we actually came up with the concept of a language lab with a sentence generator inside. So you can keep on trying that lab, thousands of sentences, no sentence will get repeated. Okay, so we have a full generator capability. So this is all what technology is able to do. Right, so we will be able to program that level of generality, which is why it should be more interesting to you also to look at. So modeling labs for automated guidance is hard, but so we know to look at guided lab, peer lab. So these are some of the things we're going to do. I'll try to close it in a minute. Okay, and improved usage experience. As I said, mouse is a computer scientist way of interacting with the world, right? Nobody uses a mouse to interact with anything in the world. So can we make interactions more natural? You can make a speech controlled this. I can tell that switch it on or connect this wire instead of having to use the mouse. And if I am a Divyang kind of person, I have a hand mobility problem, it is very difficult. I mean, even those of us who are, maybe little on the wrong side of the age, find it difficult to get the mouse to come and click on exactly that same spot, right? So alternate modes of interaction for these devices is something that's worth looking at. So gesture, speech, haptic devices, and get rid of the mouse, right? So these are also some interesting ways to look at how this technology should move further. And we are actually, so one of the things area which I'm equally or more interested in than virtual labs is games. I'm sure all of you are also interested, but I'm not interested in that game that you are interested in. I'm interested in games which can teach. Okay, so this is actually very interesting. We don't have too much time, so I'm not going to. I have a full presentation on educational games. I taught educational games course at IIT Bombay for 3-4 years. Okay, so the idea is to build a game which is as natural a game as possible, and at the end of playing that game, you also learn something. Okay, so that's a huge challenge. It is not very trivial to do. So I had students who adapted the snake and ladder game into a kind of assessment. So, for example, what does a snake and ladder game represent? There is a gradual controlled progression using the dice. It need not be dice. You can generate a random number, for example. You can ask a question and ask the student to give an answer. That can be used to do the movement from 1 to 100. What is the snake? Punishment. What is the ladder? Is a reward. So if you get something, you can give a ladder. If you get something bad, you do you can give an equivalent of a snake. So if you can take the snake and ladder game, which everybody knows, I'm sure, you can build other teaching concepts on top of it. Right, so there are ways of doing that. Even this is not a very deep game, but yes, it gets an idea. Similarly, there are some students who did golf. Okay, there also it is, if you hit it properly towards the hole, you get points. If it goes away, then you lose. So again, I can use this as a reward punishment model. So building these games which will actually help a student to learn something. It need not be at school level. I mean, all of you can do. We all want to talk about environmental awareness, plastic usage, water conservation. These are all talk of the day today because a lot of these initiatives are going on. Can we build some games which people should enjoy playing? Because it should not be a game which is very clearly boring. You are doing it only for the purpose of building awareness. It should be a game that the people will enjoy playing, and in the process you build this awareness. And that's the idea of building educational games. So making these labs also in a game form, which is called the gamification of this content, is also something interesting to explore. So we are doing, I have one of my colleagues who's pursuing a PhD at IIT on gamifying virtual labs. So some interesting things that may happen there. So as I said, these are subjects where there are no real concept of lab, but we have defined lab activities in these areas. So immersive activity, as I said, metaverse and those kind of areas can be brought in to do this. Okay, and yeah, so there's also something I wanted to share with you. Maybe some of you can also take up this, maybe VESIT can do it. So I've been working with the DJ Sangvi College of Engineering for last 3 years. 20 virtual labs I've created through those students whom I have never met. Okay, I have not met any of the students till date. Okay, and those guys have actually created these virtual labs, and all these labs, most of these are available on C-DAC's portal called vidyagas.in. You can go, you can download, you can do whatever. So there's an interesting model that kind of worked there. I don't know whether to what extent it is adaptable. So one of the reason why it became quite successful, I mean, it is the third year now. Another batch of 5 or 6 groups are still on. Is they have a subject called innovative product development in every semester. So what they do here actually becomes activity for that subject. So they get some academic credit for the activity, and they are doing something interesting. So they also get social credit because what they do actually becomes available to people at large. And many of them actually go and post it on LinkedIn and all saying that yes, I did this and my examiners appreciated it and all that. So some of these labs, school level, and now we are also looking at other areas. So typically about 10 to 15 groups of students, I've mentored them over this 2-3 year period, and they all come up with taken some topic, and we keep regularly interact, give feedback, and they refine, and get to some level, and then I pick it up and adopt it to put it on Vidyagas. Some of this we are sharing with Diksha portal CBSE also, so maybe even they will put it up there. So this was interesting. Is why I am mentioning this is something that you should try looking at as your final project. Why? Because it is not a run of the mill. So today I see there are a lot of data science students there. What do you do with a project? You will get a TensorFlow or Keras or something from somewhere, and you will get some data set from somewhere. You don't understand the data set, you don't understand the software, you run it together, you will get some nice graphs, you put it up, make a project report and say, I am a data scientist. This is a bad thing that is happening in around. So we are all laughing at it. But, so if you, those of you, I'm sure all of you were there. During the pandemic period, just when the pandemic was picking up in India, if you watched the LinkedIn, everybody in LinkedIn was a data scientist. He will take 3 days infection data, and everybody has a proposal saying how many days this infection will last, how many people will get infected before that happens, blah, blah, blah. Everybody has a prediction. After about 2 weeks, they all disappeared. Because from 3 days to make an estimate to the 4th day is very trivial, because a straight line will fit any curve in 4 or 5 points. After that, you have no idea. Right? So there are only 1 or 2 things which survived beyond that. So this is how people are looking at data science. And in my younger days, around 20 years back, when web technology was beginning to happen, or even client server models were happening, every college, one hotel reservation system, one airline reservation system, one classroom reservation system invariably will get built. I'm sure something like 1 million hotel reservation systems have been built in this country during that period. And what do? There will be one hotel, one type of room, some 3 clients. It won't support anything more. And what do you do with that? Nothing. Neither the examiner, nor the student, nor the public is interested. One report is made, which also nobody reads, and goes away. Would you like to have your project actually being used by at least some 4 people? And this is one way of doing it. Right? If you build a good lab, you put it up there, somebody will find it useful, you will actually get a satisfaction. So, before I end, I'll give you a little story, more personal one. When I did my BTech at IIT, that was the time when AI was kind of coming in India. One of my faculty came and told me and one of my friends, saying that we want to implement some work which was reported in one of the papers. So we took it up, we implemented it, and then he said, let's do this as your final project. So 2 of us, they implemented the first and only expert system shell built in India ever. That was my BTech project. And my teacher would actually take this and show all around the country wherever he goes and say, this is an expert system shell. Oh, he said it is built at IIT Madras. Okay, that's okay. But at least I can go and tell, that is actually my BTech project. Okay, so I think that is a satisfaction I think none of us ever get. So this is one way of doing it. Today, with all the technology available, you don't have to do all that. You just build it, make it available to somewhere, and a channel like this can make this. And we need possibly at least about 10,000 labs and games to happen for just the academics. I mean, school and maybe a bit of higher education. Maybe even more. So we are not going to get anywhere there. So if everybody can contribute something, it's a fantastic project. You cannot copy this from anywhere. It is original. You can apply your mind on building the software, doing the design, validation, and all that. So you will enjoy a software development experience which you normally don't do otherwise. Okay, so with that, I think I will. Okay, so I'm going to skip this assessment part. That is another area, but it will take quite a bit of time. So let me go to the end. We don't have a lot of slides. So I'll get the. So we actually doing C-DAC activity for. That's all I wanted to get. So thank you for listening to patiently. I know it's not terribly interesting to everybody. I can see some sleeping faces and yawning faces and say, when is this guy going to finish? So it's over. Now you can relax. And okay, so thank you for listening, and
Thank you so much, sir, for your enlightening words. We'll now move on with the Q&A session. Can we please have the questions, please? Hello everyone. We have distributed the mics, so we'll be asking questions. Uh, you guys will be asking the questions and sir will answer them.
So, good afternoon, sir. So, if I may, I would firstly like to thank you for such
Just a
an
second,
engaging
just
and
a second,
informative session.
Before you ask the questions, we request you to introduce yourself to sir.
I'm Preetika Khilnani, a first year from Computer Science Department. So, as I was saying, thank you so much for gracing us with your presence. And we've seen time and again how technology is being integrated to education. Like, for example, in China, they are going to the extreme limit and they are even monitoring heart rates of students. They are monitoring whether a student is yawning. They are monitoring everything to see if they are paying attention. So there is a very fine line between constructive and destructive integration of technology. How, according to you, can we as Indians identify this line? How can we implement it? And what do you think should be the end point where we should say, okay, this is enough. This is to be maintained and not to be taken to the other side. Thank you.
Oh, very interesting question. I never thought a question on this is going to be but it's interesting. I don't, of course, I don't think I can expertly say, this is the line we should draw and we should not cross this or something. A lot of it is culture dependent, context dependent, profile dependent, and all that. Because I know I have had teachers who never move around without a cane in hand, and there are also teachers who I have never seen them with a stick in hand. So I think if you look at your school days, I'm sure there are the impact or the influence of punishment has a varied picture, right? There are teachers who have been very successful without doing any punishment. There are teachers who have adopted the other route also. So I'm not going to get into a debate as to whether punishment or that kind of monitoring is critical. But where we want to look at, for example, there is a field called learning analytics and related areas where we want to do some level of individualized profiling with against a class to understand the individual strengths and weaknesses, right? So, for example, so now this may come from various angles. So, one of the things that I used to work on that times is your learning style, right? So, for example, when I gave this talk, not everybody would have got the same amount of information or the same amount of attention. Some people find that this talk is very boring. No, not necessarily because I'm a bad speaker, but how many of you can listen to a 1 hour talk just sitting at one place? So, through what do you learn best? Some people are, if you look at the work on the theory of multiple intelligences, some are auditory learners, some are visual learners, some are kinesthetic learners, some are, various types of them. So there are people, when they study, they put the earphone on and listen to music when they study. If I do that, I will only listen to the music. Nothing will get into my head because I have only one entrance to my head that is blocked with the music channel. Right? So, what is a very facilitating situation for one person is a very, very obstructing situation for another. So similarly, there are people whom, you show an equation and say, oh yes, okay, I can understand. But for most of us, if I show an equation, they will immediately start looking into the phone and say, well, is it time to go home? So what you react to these is dependent on your individual things. This is what we call a learning style. So understanding your learning style, if I am teaching only to you, is useful because I can organize it in such a way that you gain the maximum out of. In a classroom, I can't do that because there are too many different learning styles and I can't tailor to everybody. But when I start using technology to do this, maybe I can still take a via media from addressing to what Professor Pathak called the average candidate to doing some amount of personalization. So if you are using these monitoring and analytics to figure out what is the best way to communicate to you, to teach you, to understand your weakness, very effective, because instead of conducting an exam every time, which itself is get so many copying and all that happens, it is far more effective. But the dividing line, as you are rightly saying, is very thin. Immediately there I will report all your names to the principal and say these are the people who are yawning in the class and how many times you yawned in the class. I think we are possibly going too far, right? And what will you get out of it? So, I don't want to look at the line on the other side, but you can look at technology to understand candidates better. Because again, you remember, in a class like this, maybe 5 or 6 people will ask questions, they will interact. When I look at also, there are 5-6 people who are nodding, who are at least making an eye contact with me. But most people are not. Are they learning? Are they understanding something? Are they interested? I have no idea. It would be nice if there is a device which can tell me how many of these people are actually listening to me, how many of them want to go home. Because if I realize that the number who want to go home is more than 90%, I will say, Tata, thank you for listening at that point. Because after that, there is no point in wasting time. So, a teacher control, teacher direction, teacher planning, instructional planning, all that can come out of that feedback. There is a constructive way to use it, but like any technology, it is up to us whether the stick will be used to constructively or to destructively.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Pritika. We will move on to the next question. Anyone else?
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Shreyas Das, second year Electronics and Computer Science student. So my question is, can you please provide some examples of how technological intervention can motivate and make student more engagement in learning processes?
Examples, one is active learning strategies, which is something that we are all talking about. So when the student gets involved in performing an activity, which is why maths teacher gives you so many assignments. When you perform that and you don't, you have a problem, you immediately realize that, okay, this I have not understood. But when I show you the sum on the board, everything looks crystal clear to you till you get the exam paper. Right? We have all seen that. Everything looks very clear. I've already prepared. When I look at it, hey, this how do I do? So this is, the engagement is something which helps you to apply it on the spot. Prevents your mind from going to sleep. Distractions are reduced because you are focused on the task at hand. Virtual lab kind of thing is another one which allows you to, because it is the student has to perform activities. Okay, and on the other side, for example, video lectures is something that people have found is terribly bad. And if you also notice, most of the MOOCs, there are no videos which are more than something like 10 minutes. Because by the time you sleep off, the video is over. Now you have to wake up, you have to go to the next one, click the button, start it, only then you will continue. So the idea is to keep the engagement at least some level so that you don't lose attention. Layer 1. The layer 2 is to create interest and say, oh, this is interesting, I want to understand this more. Which is where more inquiry driven learning processes, where the teacher asks you questions. What do you think can happen here? Will this work somewhere else? And can I take this to something? Take a completely different domain and say, do you think this will apply, can be used there? This is the age-old Socratic method of inquiry learning and all that. You ask questions, you start thinking, will this do? Like a lot of PhD students, I ask this question, can this work be extended to something? The answer is usually blank. Because the thinking doesn't happen, understanding doesn't happen. So one key point of building engagement is to get the understanding in your mind, a deeper understanding. Because things will connect, your neural networks in your brain will actually start getting connected, you will enjoy it more. As long as learning is peripheral, you just have to mug up those definitions and go and vomit in the exam paper, your brain is not really involved. So then you can't do. So these are all things, some of the things that we do. Discussions, so what people are calling flipped classrooms, where you do the reading outside and come to the class only for discussions. So these are all ways where we can create some level of positivity for building interest.
Thank you, sir.
Next question.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Jay Parmar. I am from AIDS second year. So my question was, since a lot of students are going on the online platform for their studies, and now even the practicals are held on the online platform through virtual labs, what are the security strategies that are applied so that the student data is not misused or piracy does not take place?
Okay, another very relevant question. Lot of these things are currently going on. So a lot of it is technological, and a part of it is awareness on the part of the user. So I think we see all the messages saying never share your OTP, don't put your password, keep changing your password often, blah blah, all that usual guidelines I think is necessary to follow, because a lot of security is in our hands, right? If you, I mean, even when we did, I think somebody was reporting that they did an audit and they found that 50% of the user password was welcome123. Okay, and many cases it is the username. Okay, so these are all easy for anybody to guess. So there are password policies saying that it will be at least this much length and etc. So that is one way for you to protect. The other is the platform itself. There are many platforms who actually exposes your details to third party to get money, to get more marketing things and all that. But so choose the right platform. Choose platforms which are certified or accepted and are found to be safe. Ensure that platform security things like those HTTPS and those kind of things that you can find online, those guidelines. So be aware of the challenges of an online life, and take precautions from your side. And platforms are also encouraged to do it, but it's not in your control. You become the choice, choose the right platform.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Next question, please. Yes, in the last row, second row.
Hello sir, I am Chinmay. I'm from IT department. I wanted to ask about the physical constraints. Many students are not accessible to these equipments in rural areas, and nor they have good labs. So what precautions are you taking to ensure that they will get the same same technological advancement as we are getting? And also I wanted to ask that you said about like we can give a sense of touch by haptic devices, but we can't give a sense like of smell. So what precautions are you taking to like ensure that student will get this sense also, so that they get the feel of having in a physical lab, like being in a physical lab?
Okay, so there is nothing I can do about giving a sense of smell. That is when you have devices which will bring a smell capability, we can adopt it. We are not doing anything about it. I don't know whether it is feasible also. I read somewhere that in the movie industry also there was a transition, and they had I forget the name. They had theaters which actually help you experience smell. Okay, so what happened is they depending on the scene, they actually spray chemicals through separate conduits which spreads. What happens is the smell doesn't die away when the scene changes, right? So after for some time you get a mix of all the smells. So the idea didn't take off. We tried with a few theaters or something, but it didn't work out. So smell is a different kind of thing compared to, like for example, visual. The moment I switch off, it is out. I can disable, enable much easier, right? So and even touch, for example, if I can have touch this second, and 1 second later there is no touch. So those are challenges. I think it's for you people to come up with some interesting solution which can make you feel. Now accessibility is an issue. Today with mobile phone penetration being exceptionally high in India, a lot of people are looking at using mobile phones as an alternative to computers to make at least some of the things available. A problem is that the limited screen space. So if I want to do a virtual lab or an activity, then it is very little space for to maneuver. If I want to just listen to a video, that's okay, because I can reduce the size, I can still listen to it. So these are still challenges. I think people are looking at low-cost devices and the mechanisms like that to make these devices more widely popular. But that is about it. We don't have magic solutions there.
Thank you. We'll have one more last question. Does anyone? Yes, please.
Good afternoon, sir. I am Atharva Chavrekar, first year ECS department. Sir, I want to ask a question that how can we measure the technology intervention in education just beyond access and participation that is truly contribute to the learning outcome and development of the nation?
That's a very complex question. I am not sure where I should start answering it from. No, measuring effectiveness in education is a challenge. I mean, how do you decide that whether a teacher is good or bad? Okay, if you want to evaluate all of your teachers on a scale from 0 to 100, what is the metric that you will use? If the teacher makes everybody pass, you will give him 100 marks. Okay, and the teacher who fails you, you get 0 marks. So that is one unfortunate metric. So you can say communication skills, knowledge of the subject, delivery, but how do you actually evaluate them? How do you check the knowledge of the subject? It is your perception. So that is a problem that education also has, that not all technologies we can evaluate on a number and say this is 0.1, this is 0.3, that is 0.5. It is more qualitative, semi-quantitative kind of models. You can do surveys, you can do experiments, you can correlate the exposure to the exam score. Not a very reliable measure, but that's also one thing you can do. Like if I teach in a certain way and all my students are doing very well in the board exam compared to another teacher who doesn't, maybe the way I'm teaching has some contribution to it. Okay. So like that you can formulate measures. There are also people working on building devices which I think like she was talking about, whether the person is attentive. Okay, and to see, I mean, for example, there is one work that I think IIT Bombay had done, where all students are given a small device, where you can frequently say that this lecture, I mean, at this point, the lecture is boring or interesting, or I'm motivated, not motivated, some metric. Aggregating this also, I get an idea as to what part of my talk or what part of what I'm doing is making more sense to them, where I need to improve. Right. So there are these kind of things that people are doing, but I don't think there is the solution which will answer your.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for patiently answering the question. The mic, please, to ma'am.
I want to say. Just now somebody was asking, how can we engage the students using technology? So yesterday I was reading the feedback of teachers from students. Some students had written about some teacher that, why should the teacher think that all of us should think? Right? Because the teacher has given some questions the students have to learn. Think on your own and come up with the answers. Why should the teacher do that? He should teach only. This is the comment which has come. So please don't do that. The teachers, until and unless they make you think, they are not successful, I would say. If only delivering the lecture using a PPT, giving everything to you, then there is no two-way communication. Right? And the teacher who is giving that assignment does not expect everybody to do the same thing in the same manner. Because we also know that all of you are not understanding everything the teacher is saying. Only 80% we think that the students will understand. And out of this, he also knows that even if you understand, now only 20% of the students are going to think on it. Right? But at least he has made a beginning. You also can start thinking, and the people who are actually want to think, they will give a good assignment answer. Right? For that, you are not going to suffer. So please don't think like the teacher is doing a bad thing. Right? So please cooperate. Actually, the comment which I want to make is, Now this year we have done continuous assessment, right? When a teacher is giving continuous assessment, many classes have given comment that it is very bad. It is better that you should have 2 tests. At least we can copy. One person has written that also. At least we can copy. So what are you learning? So why are we making all these changes? Right? See, even we are doing the question paper audit of the teacher, the question paper which you are getting, thinking that all the students will get, all students should be able to be given enough possibility. That means simple questions should be there, application questions should be there, all these things, efforts we are making. But you students are thinking in this way. Then there's no technology, nothing can become successful. Students also think that nobody is expecting you to get outstanding grade. No grade, sabko mila to, then there is no meaning already. Right? And all of you know that actually these grades may not matter in your life. Right? What knowledge and what skills you have only matter in life. Right? So don't bother about all this assessment and how much grade I have got, what the teacher is doing, why the teacher is doing that. Please please try to contribute actively from your side. Then only you will learn. The innovative product development which sir has said, if you try implementing it, how many of you will come forward? A group of students should come forward. In all the activities which I am seeing, any activity I announce, a group of students are there who will be there in cultural or the technical activities we announce. Most of the participants will be same only. Now we are going to have praxis next semester, next week, right? February, May. I want whole college should participate. Lot of events are there. So this time I am going to do participation level, or I am going to assess the participation level from all the classes, right? We had one session where third year students would be knowing, one session where Barclays was coming to train our students. Right? How many students came forward? Very few came forward. And some of the classes, only 2, 3 or 5, maximum 5 students from some of the classes. Why? When an opportunity is given, why are you not coming forward? And the person came, for 75 students, we are called some expert. He had come. First day, 44 students turned up after registering. Second day, 25. So what face we will have in front of that speaker who is coming from industry? Right? That means whatever facilities you are not given, we are giving you, if you are not taking it, then all of them will be flops only. And afterwards, then we will also lose interest in arranging. No, why should I engage a teacher? And he does so many contacts and conductions, and then lot of organizational problems are there. So she spends out her time, and finally this is a response that is not good. Please participate in all the activities so that you will gain. And always please don't think the marks is the end of the thing. It's not. Right? Please cooperate. You have all facilities now. Things are pretty much simpler. You have an exam, then re-exam, special exam, all things are there. Please try to learn so that not to pass an examination. Don't study for writing in the examination, getting the tick marks, right? That's what I ought to say. Because this is practically
I'll give you one related story. When we used to run computer program courses in NCST, that earlier C-DAC, there was one thing which we made mandatory, which nobody in this country did, programming test. So we had our own tool called the Parikshak, which we still use. So it was mandatory for a student to pass the programming test. What is interesting about it is you get a problem statement, like write a program to do something. Okay, a general problem statement with an input, output, and all that. And the only thing acceptable as an answer is a working program. And we don't even look at the program. You submit the program. The system will test your program against secret test cases. If it passes all the test cases, you get full mark, otherwise you get 0. Zero. Okay. But so this is, I mean, there is so much written about this thing called MGPT. But why I'm mentioning this is people found it very hard. Because there is nothing hard. It is the same program that you write. But what happens is you don't have a habit of thinking from a problem statement. How should I design my program to meet that requirement? What are the key parameters or key variables in that problem statement which I should actually represent? How should I represent it? And when I write a program, if it doesn't work, how do I debug it? Now you go and check among all of your friends. I'm sure 90% of students don't know how to debug even a 50-line program. That was the challenge. So most of cases you write a program, after some time it will fail. Then what? So we were challenging them, saying you should know how to debug, how to fix the problem. And nobody knows. And I can't teach you. This is like, how do I teach you swimming? You jump into the pool. Take a shallow pool and jump into it. You will come out, that means you will learn swimming. Right? So it was something that required consistent practice, trying, thinking and all that is required. That exam usually has a pass rate of something like 2 to 3%. 2 to 3% in the whole class. But still people wanted it. People used to come back after 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years saying, I want to take that exam and clear. Okay, because why this was important was, it was not very important whether you cleared that exam. Just that experience of going through it, seriously attempting it, made you a much better programmer. And many people have come back and told me, even today I can show you on LinkedIn and all that, people come and write to me, that MGPT taught me how to write programs. So today you don't see that, you don't get that. You copy it from somewhere, now you have ChatGPT, you ask ChatGPT to write your program, submit it, everybody is happy. But that is ultimately going to harm you only. So the thinking, it's ultimately not about
talk and also stimulating the thought process in the students. I'm sure there's a lot of learning points that we had today that could keep you start thinking about what can be done, not just now, but also for the future of the country. Students in the last row, can I have your attention, please? Thank you. Because this whole program is for the future of the country at the rate of 2047. And that is the time when you will be the young people leading this country. And if this does not stimulate your thought process for what it is going to be for the future, I'm sure, and I'm sure it is stimulating, and it will ignite the thought process for each one of you, because that's what we are here for. So we have had Sir not only talking about the NEP 2020, which is definitely a mind-blowing program which has changed the whole education system, but also the way it has changed, right from the old classroom teaching and how we have today the virtual labs, the O labs. I think some have already been implemented in our college. The labs are already implementing it. And not only that, but also the place where you can contribute, each one of you, if you think and if you process. So with that, we come to today's end of Amrit Kaal Vimarsh and Viksit Bharat at the rate of 2047. The future of our country, 100 years since independence, how are we going to be propelled into the world? We will no more be a developing nation, but a developed nation. And it's thanks to you, dear students, because you are going to be our future. And all this is for you, and I'm sure you would have absorbed what is required, all that is being presented here in order to take a country far ahead than any other country in the world, and even back to the golden age that we had. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir, so much fun. And thank you, ma'am, for being with us. Thank you, everybody.
Excuse me, everyone, just a little attention, please.